Britain has an epic history, but within it there's a wealth of untold secrets still to uncover.
It's a really key find of the week.
So every year, hundreds of archaeologists set out, hunting for clues to solve the mystery of who we are and where we've come from.
We've just found this amazing pendant.
Over the past year, their discoveries have been more exciting than ever. This series will explore the best of them.
Just found a coin. Oh, marvellous.
Brought to you from the field in a very special way.
I think I got it.
Each excavation has been filmed for us as it happened by the archaeologists themselves.
It looks absolutely fantastic.
But he had a bad day when he never brought these back.
Their dig diaries mean that we can be there for every crucial moment of discovery.
Do we have a winner here?
I think it's stunning.
Incredible.
Our archaeologists will be joining us here in our special lab to take a closer look at their finds and to figure out what they really mean. This is so exciting. Welcome to Digging for Britain.
In this episode, we're exploring the discoveries from the north of Britain that change what we know about this island's story. We scramble to uncover the earliest origins of Scotland's first kingdoms.
I think I got it.
We're there for the find of a lifetime that reveals the true extent of Viking power.
Oh, do we have a winner here?
And a new housing development reveals the mass graveyard of warriors whose people may have marched from Europe to settle in Yorkshire.
It looks absolutely fantastic.
These discoveries are rewriting our history. To find out how, archaeologist Matt Williams and I have been given special access to Yorkshire Museum. Its collection tells the story of the North and the people who settled here.
The Gilling sword.
And we're going behind the scenes to the back rooms that ordinary visitors just don't get to see.
You could get lost in here for days.
Star Carr is an archaeological site of world importance. Excavations began here in 1948 and have revealed a Stone Age settlement 11,000 years old. The whole site covers 5 acres. Discoveries at Star Carr include the remains of Britain's oldest house, ancient tools and the earliest carpentry in Europe. Finds like these have shown how our Stone Age ancestors lived. Digging for Britain first visited the site in 2011, when I discovered that the team's work had become a race against time. The soil at Star Carr was becoming acidic and destroying the evidence.
So that's some antler from the original excavations on the site.
Yeah.
So when would that have been excavated?
1950.
1950.
This antler has been preserved in almost perfect condition, but the items being pulled from the ground 60 years later have deteriorated drastically.
It's like a piece of rubber. It's basically because the water table has fallen dramatically.
Right.
That's let oxygen into the deposits and that's created a chemical reaction. We've been told by our specialists it's a bit like car battery acid.
It is shocking to see how the acid is attacking Star Carr, and it shows just how urgent the work carried out by Nikki and her team really is. But now they are finally running out of time as 6 decades of research at Star Carr come to an end.
They're hoping to solve one last mystery and reveal the true significance of this site to our Stone Age ancestors. Was Star Carr just a settlement, or do the clues show that it was something much more? This is their dig diary. From day one, it was clear that the soil had become even more acidic.
It's actually very fragile. This is one of the problems that we have. And this bit is turning to jelly.
the chances of finding any well-preserved artefacts seemed slim. Then, a couple of weeks in, the archaeologists dug another trench where, remarkably, the soil conditions were very different and the preservation outstanding.
Just cleaning off this area behind me, and it's incredibly exciting. Here we've got an absolutely jam-packed area of bone and flint and wood that we've not seen anywhere else on the site. And in the rest of the trenches, we've had a real problem. We've had very acid conditions, which has meant that the bone and antler has disappeared. So this is a really amazing insight into what people were doing on the edge of the lake here. People are placing bone and antler and wood in this area.
But why would people have been deliberately placing these materials here 11,000 years ago? A few days later, another remarkable discovery could be a clue.
It's a deer.
It is a deer, yeah.
It's a cluster of deer skulls.
It's a really amazing example. There are lots from this site, but this one is very robust. You can see the antlers here coming off the main skull, and it's also in association with a couple of roe deer skulls, one here and one here. So we're just cleaning it up some more, and then we'll be lifting it very carefully and taking it to the conservation labs.
This discovery is new evidence to support a growing theory that explains the wealth of deer skulls at Star Carr.
These have been made into headdresses from red deer skulls, and we think that they were possibly used by shamans, wearing them on their heads as part of ritual practices. It's just amazing to think that 11,000 years ago someone might have had one of these on their heads.
In the final few days, even more of these partial deer skulls are uncovered. But can they really be ritual headdresses? I'm in the vaults of York Museum to see the evidence for myself.
Can we open it up?
We can.
Look.
It's like Christmas.
So this is the latest one. So it is just the top of the skull, essentially. We've lost all of the nose and the upper jaw down here.
We have.
So it is just this uppermost part with the antlers attached.
And that's one of the first clues that tells us that this probably isn't just a piece of deer skull that's been found in the ground. It's been worked by human hands for a particular purpose. If this is a deer in its prime, a large deer, it would have very big antlers, and they've been trimmed back. And what that does is effectively makes this a lot lighter. An almost cap-type shape. If you think of a hollowed-out skull, it's almost a cap-type shape going on there. So one of the other features that we see, and we certainly see on other frontlets that have been found, are these piercings, these circular piercings that you see through the skull. Now, these piercings could be for sinew or for cord to pass through. It suggests that this might be something that's been worked by human hands to be worn on the head.
And it's really important as well that this isn't a unique object, that it's one of many that have been found at Star Carr.
Or just over 20 similar objects have been found at Star Carr, so this is not a one-off, and they all seem to be treated in the same way. So perhaps it's a group of objects that are being used for a very specific purpose and made in a very specific way.
The archaeologists think it's likely that these skulls really were worn as ritual headdresses. Together with the wealth of votive offerings of antler and bone, the finds suggest that Star Carr was more than just a settlement. Back at the dig on day 40, the team makes another remarkable and exceptionally rare discovery, which also hints at the ritual significance of Star Carr.
We have actually just found this amazing pendant, which actually has artwork on it. It's so rare to find something like this. There's only a few pieces of artwork from this country and very few from the whole of Europe. It's very classic Mesolithic. It has geometric lines on it.
An 11,000-year-old pendant, piles of bone and antler. Nikki believes that this could be evidence that Star Carr held sacred significance.
And we're really beginning to think that these things weren't just lost, they were perhaps some kind of votive offerings that were placed in this particular spot.
A piece of Mesolithic artwork is an extraordinary find anywhere in Europe. I can't wait to hear what this one can tell us about Star Carr. This is so exciting. When I heard that you'd found this, I didn't quite believe it, Nikki, I must say. You must have been thrilled to find that on your site.
The more we've looked at it and the more we've analysed it, the more excited we're getting about it, really, because Mesolithic art is incredibly rare, particularly for this country. And so to find something like this is really spectacular.
I can certainly see quite a bit of detail here, but also you've got this enlarged image of it, which really brings it out, doesn't it? That you've got these longer incised grooves on it, but lots of little tiny grooves as well. An awful lot of detail here.
One interpretation I quite like at the moment is that we might have a tree on here, so that's the trunk and these are the branches coming off it. And I think I'm interested in that because, again, for shamans, sometimes trees can be holy, they link different parts of the spirit world, and so possibly there's something like that to it. The interpretation of pendants in Denmark, where they're usually made of amber, is that they might be amulets, and so they're protecting the person who wears them.
So over the 6 decades or so that excavations have been going on at Star Carr, what has that added to our knowledge of the Mesolithic in Britain?
Because we've opened up such a large area, we have a much better understanding of how people were living there. We have houses, huts on the dry land. We have great big platforms made out of timbers on the lake edge with all these bones and headdresses and so on around them. And we think that this actually might be quite a special place in the landscape. It's at the mouth of the lake. And when people are coming up river, it's the first place they come to as they reach the lake. So perhaps it's kind of like an entrance way where certain interesting rituals and activities are happening.
The modified deer skulls, votive offerings, and now this exceptionally rare piece of Stone Age art provide us with extraordinary insights into life in Britain 11,000 years ago. The clues from Star Carr tell us not only about survival on a day-to-day basis, but allow us a precious glimpse into the spiritual and artistic aspects of Mesolithic life. The amazing discoveries at Star Carr are the work of dedicated professionals, but sometimes we have to thank the devotion, enthusiasm, and luck of a band of amateurs.
Discover the past with exclusive ancient history documentaries and ad-free podcasts presented by world-renowned historians from History Hit. Watch them on your smart TV or on the go with your mobile device. Download the app now to explore everything from the wonders of Pompeii to the rebellion of Boudica and the mysteries of prehistoric Scotland. Immerse yourself in the captivating stories of this remarkable era by signing up via the link in the description.
Metal detectorists are a special breed, spending hours scouring the countryside and beaches looking for treasure. And very, very occasionally, they find some. Now, a hoard of treasure buried in the ground away from human settlement or other signs of human activity on its own can only offer us limited information. But sometimes the objects themselves tell a story, as with this Viking hoard. Dumfries, in the west of Scotland, where a keen metal detectorist invested months of his own time researching one particular field. What Derek McLennan found was the discovery of his lifetime that reveals the wide connections of the Vikings.
It was harvest time, so there was bales of hay in the field, and I'd been going up and down towards one particular bale, and then I decided to change tack and move to another bale. I got a signal, which was very faint, but it sounded like iron. But I thought, well, I've already dug 30 nails, so one more nail won't harm me. And I put the spade into the ground and dug out the clod, noticed something glinting in the hole, put my hand into it, it was quite deep, and when I pulled it out I saw it was silver, rubbed my thumb across it and instantly seen the saltire design, which I knew from my research was a Viking symbol.
Derek realised the importance of his find, so he immediately called the local authorities. They sent an archaeologist to help with the excavation. What they uncovered together was truly astounding. A hoard of Viking arm rings and gold ingots, But there was more.
Oh, wow!
A large Christian cross.
Do we have a winner here?
Its stunning decorations revealed for the first time in 1,000 years.
At that moment, my senses erupted, and the excitement and joy of what I'd discovered really hit me.
But there was even more treasure to come, including this beautiful pot, still wrapped in protective fabric.
The Viking hoard of the decade, I think.
The Vikings were pagan invaders who came from Scandinavia to raid Britain and to set up their own kingdoms here in 793 AD. This find could reveal new insights into this turbulent chapter in British history. So it's been handed to a team from Historic Scotland for analysis. When they lifted the lid of the pot, even more treasure was packed inside. To find out what, the team turns to modern scanning technology.
And that's got quite a density.
Yeah, and then there's a layer of dense material right down at the bottom here. So you can see it's got a lattice on it there.
Yeah.
I'll just see if we can rack through and have a look at some of the other objects.
The scans reveal rings, brooches and other pieces of fine jewellery packed inside the pot. Excavating and conserving them has taken months. Now, almost a year after making his remarkable discovery, Derek has come to view the treasures for himself.
Attached on the inside there.
It's kind of hard to put into words. I'm absolutely stunned by the amount of artefacts that are come out of the pot, and the textiles, everything being so carefully wrapped and packed. Shows that even 1,200 years ago, these objects were very coveted and cared for.
This hoard is full of riches and mystery. It brings the Viking world alive and shows that there was more to these legendary warriors than just raiding.
Richard, I think the appropriate response is, wow, this is astonishing. What a beautiful collection.
It's pretty remarkable stuff, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to see it all laid out like this.
One particular treasure has been fashioned from a silver coin, which gives a clue to the date and origins of the hoard.
There's the word Rex.
Yes.
And if you come back round here, you can start with C-O-E-N-W-U-L-F. Coenwulf.
Coenwulf.
Rex.
Coenwulf was the Viking king of Mercia in the Midlands. He ruled from 796 to 821 AD, leading experts to believe that this is when the hoard dates from, a period when Viking raids on Britain were intensifying.
So do you think this is Viking plunder that's been gathered together and buried in the ground?
You can't help but start to speculate that this is some form of Viking raiding booty. Why would someone who was a devout Christian bury things like that wonderful cross?
This cross is
well, yes,
gorgeous.
I mean, this is exceptional. And a beautiful, wonderful, simple form of the Celtic cross with what we think of the four apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John.
Isn't that wonderful?
Can you see the saint's head with
yes,
and then the hand there?
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean, that's straight out of Book of Kells manuscript, isn't it?
It is, it's wonderful.
And the cross is straight out of the wonderful St John's cross on Iona, for example. It's quite something.
This cross is typical of the treasures plundered by Vikings from Christian monasteries across Britain and Europe. But further clues in the hoard show that the Vikings weren't only interested in raiding, they were motivated by commerce as well.
This is beautiful, this pot.
At the top are this series of 8 glass beads of various shapes and forms, some of them held in clasps with metal or silver fixings.
But there seems to be a variety of objects
yes,
and of
yes,
different
yeah,
styles
yeah,
coming from
yeah.
different places, coming from France, Anglo-Saxon styles and Viking styles.
Yeah.
So what's this object in here then, Richard?
We think that what you see between the gold braid is a glass vessel of some description. Sitting within a very fine leather pouch with this extraordinary sumptuous silk, a Samite silk from the Far East or the Middle East. It's something very precious and very special, wrapped in something which was very, very exotic.
Eastern treasures like this remind us that there was more to the Vikings than simple raiding. By the 11th century, the Vikings' vast trading network stretched across Europe, beyond Constantinople, all the way to Baghdad. They were a trading superpower, which engaged with cultures right across the known world. But the Vikings weren't the first foreign power to colonise Britain. The Romans began their conquest centuries earlier, in 43 AD. The story of Rome's 400-year rule is well known. But what happened here after the Roman Empire fell is still a mystery.
The end of Roman rule in Britain saw us plunged into the Dark Ages, several obscure centuries for which there is little written record. And actually finding archaeological evidence from this period of time is relatively rare. But a team of archaeologists is hoping to strike it lucky with a new dig at an abandoned Roman military fort near Lancaster.
This is the famous Roman fort of Ribchester, where a team is digging for evidence to explain what happened in Britain after the Roman Empire fell, and to reveal if we really did slip into centuries of chaos, often thought of as the Dark Ages. They start by excavating the Roman road running through the fort and get their first intriguing clue.
Just cleaned off this Roman road surface, and we've just discovered that it's been robbed, which is really interesting.
The road appears to have been dismantled after the Roman occupation, with the heaviest stones taken away.
It's a really nice insight into the operations of the fort pretty much after the Romans have left, because they're destroying the infrastructure of it to build buildings and taking that material away somewhere else.
So what were these Dark Age Britons building with this stone, and where? The team thinks they found the first clues at the other end of the fort.
Beginning of week 3, and we have large bits of tile, and that more intense orange is the robbed away hearth, and that orange burning element there suggests we've got sort of workshop activities taking place within that building.
The burnt orange earth suggests that this was the site of a fire, built after the Roman administration had collapsed. But this fire does seem to be on an industrial scale, making it possible evidence of manufacturing. And further excavation reveals what they may have been making.
That's fantastic. That's a fantastic piece of evidence. Really nice thing there. That is really good evidence that the manufacturing here involved glass. There's a little bit of a runoff of glass, probably from recycling old vessels and stuff like that. It's a really key find. Find of the week. Thank you very much.
We sometimes think of Dark Age Britain as extremely backward. But with this glass and the signs of an industrial fire, this dig could be revealing something very different. Britons converting an old Roman fort into workshops. It's new evidence for an era of enterprise, and further finds offer more clues to this new British post-Roman economy.
I've just found a coin. Oh, marvellous. So it is. So it's a tiny 3rd or 4th century Roman coin. Marvellous. There we go.
The team finds over 20 more coins, all from around the same workshop building. Now Duncan has brought these and his other finds into our lab. We're hoping that they can tell us how this fort was used after Roman rule collapsed, and shine a light on the truth about Britain in the Dark Ages.
Okay, so we found
22 coins when we were excavating there, in those very, very top surfaces. And so I think that this is the very, very end of the Roman use of the fort.
Can we have a look at some of these coins? I'll
Yeah,
bring this over so that we can see them a bit more clearly.
The head on that side is hardly visible, isn't it? It's almost smooth.
Hardly visible, exactly. We're looking at a lot of wear and use that's going on as well.
But this is a Roman coin. Who's the emperor on that then?
Valentinian is the emperor on that one. So it's minted between 364 and 378.
But Duncan believes that these coins were deposited perhaps 2 centuries later. They're very heavily worn, suggesting that they may have been used long after Roman rule in Britain ended in 410.
And I think given that we've got all that wear, these coins were probably in circulation for quite a long time. Certainly after you see the collapse of sort of Roman administration, really, coins and pottery are no longer created in the same volumes or at all as they were previously. But the people who live in these forts and in these sort of Roman landscape places almost certainly remain there. So they continue to use quite a lot of this material culture. And certainly I think that, you know, we shouldn't be seeing this as an absolute cut-off point. We shouldn't be saying, you know, 410 AD, the Romans left. What is happening is part of a continuous decline or transformation, is probably a better way of thinking about it, into something completely different.
Without military rule, post-Roman society in Britain would undoubtedly have been more dangerous. But this new evidence suggests that it may have been more sophisticated than we thought.
So the person who dropped this coin here, for example, what was he doing in the fort?
What we're seeing there is a whole series of different manufacturing activities. So we've got the glass that you can see there, we've got the weights, we've got coins for trade and exchange. We think we've got tanning pits, and we think we've got evidence of iron making as well.
But wouldn't you have expected those things to be present in a Roman fort as well?
Not necessarily, no. By the time you get into the 4th century, it becomes quite a dangerous place to be. If you're moving large numbers of goods and valuable things across the north of Britain, you're probably going to be attacked. There's probably lots of brigands around, that sort of stuff. So I suspect that as we start to see the breakdown of that administration, of the safety networks that exist, then you see that manufacturing to support the fort and starting to take place within it itself.
These finds show that we're wrong to think of the Dark Ages as a period of utter chaos and decline in Britain. Archaeology suggests that this was in fact a new age of resourcefulness, when Britons began their own trades and industries and built a new society. While England was being rebuilt after the Romans, in Scotland it was a different story. Here, the earliest line of Scottish kings was reaching the height of their power. But today, the full story of these northern rulers remains shrouded in mystery.
The Picts were the ancient people of Scotland, depicted by history as fearsome, painted warriors, feared even by the Romans.
While southern Britain fell to the armies from Rome, here in the north, the Picts were largely unconquered. They continued to rule across Scotland and into northern England, right up until the 10th century. But their story is little known.
Hard evidence of the Picts and their kingdom has been hard to find. Now, though, a team of archaeologists thinks they might just have pinpointed the seat of Pictish power. Here's their dig diary.
Some of the very few clues the Picts left behind are giant symbol stones. The most famous is the 6-foot-tall, terrifying-looking Rhynie Man. These stones seem to be linked with Pictish royalty. Archaeologist Gordon Noble has spent his entire career searching for evidence of the Picts, and he's now digging at a site in the east of Scotland where some of their mysterious symbol stones have been found. He's hoping to unearth the seat of forgotten Pictish kings.
Right, here we are at Carr. This is the site where, in the 19th century, 6 Pictish symbol stones were found on top of the sea stack here. Only a few people have visited the site in the 20th century and didn't really note much on top. But already yesterday was our first ascent, which was quite precarious and slightly scary. we found remains on top.
It's a promising find, but to fully investigate it, they'll have to make the dangerous climb all over again. The stack is 60 feet tall, surrounded by jagged rocks, and the chilly North Atlantic. A strong defensive position for a Pictish warrior tribe, but not the easiest commute for a team of archaeologists. However, if they have found a Pictish fort, it will all have been worth it.
Right, so we're on top of the sea stack now, where the symbol stones were found. We're at the lower portion of what we think is the fortified site.
Following the trail of the symbol stones pays off immediately. The very first trial trench reveals an area of flat stones, possibly a hearth.
So it looks like evidence of actual occupation activities actually on top of the promontory here. So that's quite exciting. We've got lots of charcoal with fragments of animal bone. So hopefully this will give a good evidence of how people were using the promontory in the past.
It's a promising start. And another trench provides evidence that this site may in fact have been a dwelling or even a fortress.
Okay, so we're in test pit 5 at the moment. So we've just opened this up and we've found a series of post holes. We've got one that's the fill's been excavated out, and then we've uncovered another 4 over here in a row. You can see them over here, and there's another possible one, half a one, sitting over in the corner out here. So this might be part of a building, we don't quite know yet, but we're taking samples from that one, so we'll wait and see what we've got for the rest.
A line of post holes suggests a wooden wall. And by day 4, the team has uncovered hard evidence of a substantial fortification.
So we've got some quite exciting results here. We've got remains of big slots here. These were for timber beams, and this one here projects all the way from the edge of the cliff up to this feature here, which is a giant, very large post hole here. So it looks like we've got both upright timber elements and horizontal timber elements, creating this big wall enclosing the sea stack here. So that's quite exciting and great detail really on the construction methods for this rampart here.
The team have found compelling evidence that this was once a fortified site. But to be sure that it belonged to the Picts, they'll have to radiocarbon date their finds.
That rock stack looked really difficult to access. Presumably it would have been connected to the mainland by a more significant causeway, perhaps.
Well, we think so. We think it was probably a promontory in the Pictish period, which makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't want to build a fort on top of the stack today, certainly.
The dating came back with some staggering results. This sea fort does date to the time of the Picts, but incredibly, it's 200 years older than anyone expected.
Well, it's quite interesting. The dates for most Pictish forts fall into the 5th and 6th centuries AD, when they really seem to reach their height of construction and use. But this example here, we just got the radiocarbon dates back, and it's actually 3rd and 4th centuries AD, which is really interesting. So it's the earliest example that we have so far.
What's more, they think that this fort was just one of a string of coastal defences built by the Picts to defend their territory.
And we know that these defending enclosures were deeply implicated in kingship. So we perhaps have the first glimmers, really, of that process where we get the emergence of these early kingdoms in northern Britain.
So if this is the emergence of early Pictish kingdoms, what's that growing out of?
Smaller scale societies in the Iron Age, certainly, or certainly a shift towards more lineage-based models where we're getting certain individuals styling themselves as kings and really underlining their power by building these forts.
So they're growing into bigger political units, effectively?
Really, this period is the birth or the first evidence for these essentially what become the early medieval states of Northern Europe emerging. So it's a really, really important time period.
The discovery of Britain's earliest Pictish fort is huge, But it is not the seat of royal power Gordon was hoping for. So he's starting a new dig at Rhynie itself, whose place name comes from the Celtic word for king. This was where Rhynie Man once stood, and the site is still marked by other mysterious symbol stones.
These symbol stones date to the 5th and 6th centuries AD, and we have this contemporary complex of monuments and enclosures round about the standing stone here. This standing stone here, the cross stain, which hopefully you can see that there's a salmon here and a Pictish beast as well. Big long legs here and the snout here and this little mane on the top here.
The symbol stone marks the entrance to a huge circular enclosure. His hunch now is that the scale of this site shows it was far more significant than the fort at Unearthed.
So we're trying to uncover a bit more of this settlement this year, and so we've dug this very large trench, about 40 metres by 35 metres, to uncover more elements of the enclosure complex.
This new trench reveals the circular enclosure was defined by a deep outer ditch and a defensive timber wall or palisade.
Right, day 12 at Rhynie, a lovely summer's day. So we're down here looking at the palisade and post setting that defines the outer boundary of the fort here. So we're getting some really quite exciting architectural details down here, beginning to find evidence of actual planks and post settings here. And then just over to my right, over here, there's a whole line of post holes, and these seem to respect this outer enclosure here. So we've got a big wooden plank-based wall on the outside, and then big posts on the inside, perhaps creating a raised platform, a raised walkway round the edge of the fort right here.
Gordon's team has found evidence of a huge fort. It would have been 60 metres in diameter, and its defensive wall was complex. The team has found the remains of a second wall outside the first. It begins to look like Gordon's hunch has paid off. His team may have discovered a royal stronghold worthy of the first kings of Scotland.
The reason this big wooden wall is important is because we know that in this period Pictish kings are closely tied to these fortified sites, and that seems to be one of the underpinnings of their rulership. And we've had very few excavations of this scale to actually reveal this important architectural detail, and really the scale of the outer enclosure is really quite staggering at this relatively early phase in the 5th and 6th centuries AD.
The Pictish kings are Britain's most mysterious rulers. And now Gordon's team has pushed back the date of the rise of their power and discovered what may have been one of their primary strongholds. But incredibly, that's not all. Gordon has also discovered evidence here to show how the Pictish kings lived, and he's brought it back to our lab.
So who actually lived at a palace like this? I mean, a king, what kind of area would he have covered? Was it his family there? Would there have been an army there?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I'd call it a palace. I'd call it a kind of royal complex, really. Okay. It's clearly, perhaps, at certain times of the year, people lived there. We have buildings inside. But at the same time, we don't have any evidence for actual, grinding of grain or some of the more everyday tasks. I think this is more likely a place where kings are coming at certain times of the year and entertaining his followers.
Some of the finds reveal that this entertaining was done in a lavish style, using imported luxuries.
So these things don't look like much. They look like, bits of toffee or something. But this is incredibly rare pottery in Britain and Ireland in this time period.
So where's it actually from?
We don't know exactly, but somewhere in the eastern Mediterranean. And these would have been big storage at Amphora of the 6th century AD or late 5th century. They're probably for storing wine or some other exotic foodstuff.
Do you think by the time they got to Scotland they still had wine in there?
I hope so. I can't imagine why else they would come so far. So these are the northernmost examples found in Britain and Ireland so far. And they're coming really far inland.
So the Pictish Kings of Rhynie getting a bit of a taste for the luxuries of the Mediterranean.
That's right, yes. It's amazing to think, really, that Pictish high-status people were sitting in Rhynie drinking Mediterranean wine in the 6th century. It's quite a fantastic image, really, isn't it?
There was more going on at Rhynie than just fine dining. The team also found signs of a ritual offering of cattle bones and teeth buried in a pit right underneath the spot where Gordon believes Rhynie man himself once stood. It's another clue to the ritual significance of the fort.
It's not the most defensible location. Most forts in this time period are on promontories or on hills. So this is a more lowland location. And what we think we've got here is that it's using the language of defence, but actually there's perhaps more going on here. So the Rhynie man, for example, carries this axe, and it's thought to be a sacrificial axe for poleaxing cattle. So we think there's probably cult dimensions to the site, as well as being perhaps a residence at certain times of the year.
The team is delving into the mysteries of the Picts, and they've revealed what appears to have been a very early royal site, 2 centuries older than anyone expected to find. Here perhaps was the seat of Pictish power, a royal court with luxuries from the Mediterranean. For Gordon, it's a satisfying conclusion to his year-long search for the Picts. In archaeology, some fantastic discoveries come only after years of painstaking research. Others are made by chance and often against the clock. Before any major construction project gets underway, the developers must first call in the archaeologists to survey the site and to save any archaeology it might contain. Commercial digs like this often turn up surprising and exciting finds, as our next dig diary shows, when archaeologists uncovered evidence of one of the most intriguing Iron Age cultures in Britain. November 2014, in a small Yorkshire village, and a team is beginning a dig to rescue the archaeology from a site where a housing estate is planned. Time is tight. The excavation needs to be completed so construction can get underway. But within days, it's clear there's more to this site than anyone had predicted. When the archaeologists begin to unearth an array of 2,000-year-old burial mounds, known as barrows.
Right, it's John's. Very exciting 3 barrows now. John, would you mind coming to describe your burial, please?
We've got a crouch burial lying on its left side, facing east, with the head to the north.
So you've still got quite a lot to do.
Oh yeah,
here.
well, that's six burials in this one barrow alone. There's 2 that Matt's got that are just north. There's one definite grave in there, and then I see just some black patches that are still to be explored. Tons to do.
Brilliant.
More and more graves are unearthed, until it's clear that the site for the new housing estate is actually a large Iron Age cemetery. And it's such an incredibly rare find, the developers agree to give the archaeologists more time.
We're going to start stripping this area this afternoon, which we hope to see an extension of the Square Barrow Cemetery. Obviously there's great anticipation because we still have no idea what's under here.
As burial after burial is revealed, the team realise that until now, their excavations only scratch the surface of this extraordinary site.
Oh, looking good. Extremely good.
For months, the team works against the clock, until by day 149, they have revealed a staggering 38 square barrows.
Within the cemetery, we have all shapes and sizes of square barrows. This one's the classic representation, 8 metres by 6 metres, with a central grave. We've got a much smaller one here, but still with a central grave.
Barrow graves like these are usually associated with high-status individuals, like this man, who has been carefully laid out with his shield.
Yes.
It looks absolutely fantastic.
If we're right in saying that this is a shield, then that's pretty special.
Yeah.
And it's one for Pete to tick off his list.
Yeah. We came here 8 months ago anticipating a couple of square barrows, but in fact we've actually got an Iron Age square barrow cemetery. We've excavated over 60 barrows and 101 skeletons to date.
This vast cemetery was a chance find, made because of a housing development. But who were the mysterious Iron Age tribe buried here? Only now can the analysis begin, with the skeleton of a 25-year-old man, buried with an array of weapons.
He dates to the Iron Age. He's obviously significant within his community. It's highly likely that he was a warrior, that he was afforded more ritual than the other burials that we're seeing. He's a significant member of his community.
And is this the only sword you've got on site?
Yes.
Then?
Yeah, this is the only example. We've got other objects that have been found within the barrows, but that's the only sword that we've got. We've got an iron blade with a scabbard still adhering to it, made of timber, and then the horn handle.
And these little bits of bronze as well?
Yes.
Here and here? Yeah. So quite decorative at the top there.
It would have been really decorative, yes.
The fine craftsmanship hints at a sword that once belonged to someone of high status. And the spearheads found beside the body offer further insights into the burial afforded to this high-ranking man.
Along with the sword, the person had been buried with several spears that you can see around his body, and they hadn't been placed, they're just randomly positioned within the grave.
Do you imagine people throwing them into the grave then?
That's what we thought. As part of his ritual, that they stood at the top of the grave and that they were placing these spears within the grave.
This cemetery is in Yorkshire, but the style of the burials, the contents of the graves, and the design of this sword are distinctly continental. It's a mysterious phenomenon known as Arras culture and unique in Britain to East Yorkshire. York Museum holds an extraordinary collection of Arras treasures, showing cultural connections with France. And they reveal that these Iron Age people venerated not just their warrior men, but more remarkably, their women.
These beads are utterly astonishing, aren't they? They're beautiful.
They're one of my favourite objects from these cemeteries. And the wonderful thing about this necklace, which was found in a fairly elderly woman's barrow, we think, is that it's composed of lots of different types of beads. These are eye beads, and cross-culturally we know that's quite a powerful symbol to ward off evil. But these beads come from a different necklace. These are wave beads, again, from another necklace. These eye beads have been made in a completely different way to these ones.
So this perhaps suggests that they weren't all made at the same time specifically to make this necklace, then?
No, I think they've come from a range of different necklaces, and perhaps as a woman, as you enter your more senior years of life, you inherit these beads through mothers and grandmothers, perhaps as you come through things like the major rites of passage, like childbirth, and survive it, which not all women did. And this is something that you wear as a senior female figure in that community that speaks of those connections with your maternal forebears. So I think that's an extraordinary object that speaks of that biography of your connections and the families of which you're a part.
And how does the Arras culture specifically fit within what's going on around it? I mean, does it fit within the rest of the Iron Age culture in the area?
It's peculiar because there are very few other people who formally bury their dead at this time. So the phenomenon of the square barrow cemeteries is really quite unique. It has connections with the continent. That's where you might expect to see that kind of barrow. And so it's possible that that idea is being brought over by somebody important or powerful. So for all intents and purposes, our locals are at least first or second generation incomers.
The discovery of the Arras Cemetery was unexpected and extraordinary. It offers us tantalising evidence of our links to the continent in the Iron Age and to a possible mysterious tribe of ancient immigrants who came from Europe to settle in the heart of Yorkshire 2,000 years ago. From Arras to Star Carr, archaeology can reveal how our ancestors lived and what they thought. While from Scottish kings who built a new kingdom to Dark Age Britons who built a new way of life, it can illuminate worlds we never thought we could know. To reveal the ancient people with new ideas who laid the foundations for our modern Britain.